All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're looking at a place that's practically a household name, yet shrouded in total mystery. Area 51. You know the one. For decades, this patch of Nevada desert has been the ultimate symbol for government cover-ups, flying saucers, the whole shebang. But what if the actual truth behind those barbed wire fences is way more grounded, but somehow even more fascinating than the rumors? Today, we're going to break down where these alien myths actually came from, uncover some wild classified Cold War history, and figure out what was really zipping around in the skies over the American Southwest. It's a question that has been haunting humanity for centuries, right? Are we alone in the universe? It's kind of a terrifying thought either way you slice it. If we're totally alone in this vast darkness, that's spooky. If we are alone, well, that might be even scarier. Who is out there, and are they more powerful than us? For the longest time, this was just a late-night philosophical debate. But then, in 1947, a bunch of bizarre events in the American skies made this question feel incredibly, tangibly real. It all really kicked off in June of that year, when an aviator named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 glowing, incredibly fast objects slipping through the sky. He said they moved like a saucer skipping across water. And yeah, you guessed it, that is exactly where the term flying saucer comes from. Now, what's absolutely wild here is how the military actually threw gasoline on the fire themselves. Just a few weeks after that first sighting, there was a mysterious crash on a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. The Roswell Army airfields collected the debris and then released an absolutely shocking statement to the press. They literally claimed the material seemed to come from another planet. No joke. The world practically stopped spinning. But then, inexplicably, the very next day, Army officials do a total 180. They retracted the whole thing and claimed, oh, actually, scratch that, it was just a crashed weather balloon. I mean, come on. To the public, that looked incredibly suspicious. The seed for a massive government cover-up had officially been planted. Moving into Section 1, Area 51 Alien Whispers. Let's look at how decades of these incredible theories built up. So if you look at the timeline here, you can clearly see this rapid escalation of claims. For a really long time, Area 51 was basically just a nameless phantom out in the desert. Nobody talked about it. It wasn't until a 1988 TV broadcast called UFO Cover-Up Live that the base was explicitly named on television as a hub for alien activity. And then 1989 hits and things absolutely explode. A guy named Bob Lazar steps forward and publicly claims he was hired under a government contract to reverse engineer actual extraterrestrial spacecraft right there at Area 51. He said he saw the UFOs and even claimed he had communicated with aliens. And the public, who had already been primed by decades of secrecy, just eagerly ate it up. And you know, things actually got even wilder from there. It wasn't just Bob Lazar making these claims. Over the years, other people started coming forward with these incredibly specific, bizarre stories. A microbiologist named Dan Burish and later an American engineer named Bill Uhouse both claimed they directly worked alongside an actual extraterrestrial being at the base. They called him J-Rod. According to their accounts, J-Rod was an alien collaborator who communicated with the scientists entirely through telepathy. They claimed he was helping them reverse engineer advanced aerospace tech and understand alien viruses. It's just out-of-this-world stuff. Which brings us to Section 2, the Cold War truth. Let's pull back the curtain and uncover the actual facts. Okay, so here's the really crucial point. The government actually was lying to the public, just not about aliens. Let's jump back to that Roswell crash for a second. First they said flying saucer, then they quickly pivoted to weather balloon. Well, decades later, the Air Force finally admitted the truth. That debris was actually from a top-secret initiative called Project Mogul. These definitely weren't standard weather balloons. They were highly classified nuclear surveillance balloons loaded up with super-sensitive microphones. The goal was to float them at high altitudes to listen for acoustic signals from secret Soviet nuclear tests. So they were hiding absolutely critical Cold War espionage technology, not Martians. But as Soviet radar got better, balloons just weren't going to cut it anymore. The US realized they needed spy planes that could fly insanely high to photograph Soviet military bases without getting caught. So the CIA was tasked with finding a place so incredibly isolated that they could develop and test these planes in total secrecy. They ended up finding this dry lake bed in the Nevada desert called Groom Lake. I mean, it was intensely remote. We're talking over 250 kilometers through the blistering desert just to get there. And to actually convince the engineers and pilots to move out to the absolute middle of nowhere, they cheekily named the place Paradise Ranch, which of course later evolved into the highly restricted zone we now know as Area 51. Now, this number right here, 85,000, is absolutely key to the entire Area 51 mythos.
Let's put that into perspective. Back in the 1950s, your standard civilian airliner cruised at about 20,000 feet. Even the absolute best military jets maxed out around 40,000 feet. But out at Area 51, they were secretly developing the U-2 spy plane, which flew at 70,000 feet. And later on, they built the SR-71 Blackbird. This thing was a total marvel of engineering that could fly at an astonishing 85,000 feet. Plus, it was flying at 5 times the speed of the U-2. Nobody in the general public even knew airplanes could fly that high.
Moving on to Section 3, explaining the UFO sightings. Let's see where these myths actually came from. I want you to take a second and just put yourself in the shoes of an average person back in the 50s or 60s, when you have completely unclassified civilians looking up and hyper-advanced, highly classified aircraft flying overhead at unheard of altitudes. Well, you literally have the perfect recipe for a UFO sighting. Let's compare the myth with the reality here. People were reporting glowing UFOs flashing high in the sky at dusk. What was really happening? Scientists were testing the U-2 in the early evening. Because the plane was flying so incredibly high, the sun, which had already set for the people standing down on the ground, was still catching those silver wings, making it look like a fiery, glowing orb. What about the missing flight records? Well, Project Blue Book, the Air Force's own UFO investigation program, actually deleted those flight times from the public record, specifically to hide the spy plane schedules. The CIA was more than happy to let the alien rumors run absolutely wild. Having the public obsessed with little green men was basically the ultimate smokescreen to hide their real espionage tech from the Soviet Union. All right, let's wrap things up in Section 4, Viral Mania and Future Secrets. Fast forward to the modern era. After years of immense public pressure and Freedom of Information Act requests, the CIA finally declassified documents in 2013 that explicitly acknowledged Area 51 as a military test site for programs like the U-2. They confirmed there was no alien research going on. But as you can probably guess, the internet didn't really care about declassified facts. In 2019, riding this huge wave of renewed interest after Bob Lazar did a massive broadcast interview, a 20-year-old student posted a joke event on Facebook. It was called Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us. And within just weeks, a staggering 3.5 million people from around the globe had RSVP to storm the Nevada desert and uncover these alien secrets once and for all. You kind of have to laugh at the battle plan here. Participants were supposedly going to run like the anime character Naruto, with their arms stretched straight out behind them to dodge military security bullets. Now, the kid who created the event was understandably terrified by the massive response. He officially canceled it, apologized to the authorities, and explained it was literally just a meme. But the military, they didn't find it funny at all. Fearing a massive breach of a highly sensitive facility, they ended up spending an estimated $11 million on heightened security. In the end, only about 6,000 people actually showed up near the base. They basically just partied outside the gates, vastly outnumbering the local police, and then peacefully went home. So thankfully, no Naruto running was actually required. So, what is actually happening out at Area 51 today? While politicians and former presidents still love to playfully tease us about the existence of aliens, military analysts point to a very grounded but very serious reality. That highly restricted airspace over Groom Lake isn't housing Martians or telepathic beings named J-Rod. Instead, it's very likely the testing ground for the absolute bleeding edge of future combat. We are talking about advanced aerospace technology focused on space warfare dominance, the deep integration of artificial intelligence into combat platforms, and testing next-generation autonomous weapon systems. When you strip away all the flying saucers, the telepathic aliens, and the sci-fi conspiracy theories, you're actually left with something pretty profound. We have a very real history of brilliant engineers building aircraft that push the absolute limits of physics to win a high-stakes global Cold War, right under the noses of the American public. And today, they're out there quietly building the autonomous, AI-driven future of human conflict in that exact same dry lake bed. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. As Area 51 continues to pioneer the absolute extremes of human technology in total pitch-black secrecy, is the reality of what they're actually hiding arguably far more incredible and maybe even a little more intimidating than the fiction?